Uh, Good morning, afternoon, good night. Welcome, everybody, from where you are watching another episode of the Netherlands Research Integrity Network Happy Hours. We are excited to talk today about AI and ethical dilemmas that comes with the responsible use of AI tools, generative AI. And as you can see on the slide, and we have a great presenter here, Tomáš Foltinek. He's assistant professor at the University of, how do I pronounce it correctly?
Masaryk University.
In Masaryk University, and he's also the president of the board of the European Network of Academic Integrity, and he will talk us through this very interesting and very vivid and sexy subject at the moment, because a lot of people are talking about this. So I'm really looking forward to hear your talk. So Thomas, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for a nice introduction, and thanks very much for inviting me to this happy hour. First of all, let me acknowledge that this talk was adapted from what I delivered as an opening talk at NRIN meeting in September 2024 in Prague. So that was after my talk when Rita invited me to give the same or similar talk as a happy hour for NRIN. So this is it. First of all, I would like to kind of sum up the current debate on the ethical issues that are related to the use of generative AI in education and in science. And then we will proceed to some ethical dilemmas like equity versus transparency. We will talk about diversity. We will talk about the authorship responsibility and other stuff. First, let me mention some core ideas that come from the recommendations on the ethical use of AI in education that was published in mid-2023 by the European Network for Academic Integrity. For those who don't know this organization, it is an association of higher education institutions and other institutions that support experience exchange in the field of academic integrity. So at the beginning of 2023, when ChatGPT was announced and more tools become emerging in the area, we published recommendation that kind of sums up the current threats or current issues. And our position in that recommendation that I would like to defend also today is that AI doesn't bring some new threats in principle. It exacerbates the threats that have been here for years or for decades. In education, it's contract cheating or assignment outsourcing, where students submit someone else's work elaborated by someone else by contract. In science, it is the risk of data fabrication and data falsification. So it's not surprising now to say that AI tools can be used to transform or produce basically any kind of content. It's not only about text, it's also images, music, programming code, whatever. And it is increasingly challenging to reliably distinguish the AI-generated content from human-produced content. It was also one of the results of the working group within NI that we were testing the tools that detect AI-generated content, and we showed that these tools are not reliable. They produce both false positives, both false negatives, so they are not suitable for academic settings. And as I already indicated, the accessibility of AI exacerbate existing academic integrity threats. and don't bring something new in principle. Yeah, it is new by extent. It is maybe new by the actors who are using, but there is no new threat in principle. And the same applies in science. When we think about the threats to research integrity, I will now quote the paper using AI to write scholarly publications written by Muhammad Hosseini, Lisa Rasmussen, and David Resnick, like great researchers in the area of scientific integrity. So they published this editorial already in January 2023, so very shortly after ChatGPT was published. And they are particularly concerned by incorrect, irrelevant, or biased answers. So something that comes from the bias that is more or less inherently embedded in large language models, and also in publication integrity. When it comes to incorrect or irrelevant answers, so the measure that they recommend, that they propose, is that any section of a manuscript that was written by an NLP system should be checked by a domain expert for accuracy, bias, relevance, and reasoning, which basically is nothing new in principle. If we just omit the written by an NLP system, we get the statement that everyone would agree many years ago. Yeah? Any section of a manuscript should be checked by the domain expert. That's the principle of peer review. Also, if a section that was written by an AI system contains errors or biases, co-authors should be held accountable for accuracy, cogency, and integrity. Again, this is something that is true for any section of the manuscript, not necessarily for something that was written by an NLP system. And when it comes to research or publication integrity, they claim that researchers should not use NLP systems to fabricate empirical data or falsify existing data. Again, we can omit the NLP systems and get the statement that researchers should not fabricate empirical data or falsify existing data. Again, the statement that everybody would agree years ago. I will now take it more general, so talk not only about the concerns in science, but talk about the ethical issues that are related to large language models. It is a nice paper that was published by Emily Bender, Timnit Gebru, and others. That kind of summarizes the dangers related to large language models. First topic that they discuss is energy consumption and related carbon footprint, which is very frequently debated. Using of large language models is computation-wise much more demanding than running traditional programs, but this is getting better over time. The providers of such tools do their best to make it more and more efficient to save the resources. So also the carbon footprint that is related to the computation is getting lower and lower. But still, there is some carbon footprint related, and unfortunately, those who are affected by climate change, hurricanes, sea level rise, droughts and floods, and all these natural disasters that become more frequent. So those who are affected are people mostly in developing countries, in poor countries, whereas those who are benefiting from large language models are people in rich countries in developed world. This is something that is called environmental racism, whereas one part of the population benefit from the technology, but the other part is affected by the negative sides. Yeah, people who don't even talk to large language models because it was not trained on their languages. There will be some societal changes, labor market, AI will take over a lot of jobs or significant part of the workload in certain professions. So it will certainly lead to changes in labor market. It is not necessarily bad, but it will change the society, and any change in the society is potentially risky. Then there is impact on individuals. Any use of technology creates dependency on the technology. We become more and more reliant on that technology and lose our ability to solve the problems by ourselves. So there is a concern that overusing of large language models lead to the loss of ability to write or produce something by ourselves. And now we are getting to issues that are directly related to science. So hallucinations and confabulations that may lead to inaccuracies in scientific outputs. And bias in scientific outputs, which is the issue that is very much debated. There are both anecdotal evidence and systemic evidence that, yes, the outputs of such systems are biased. There is a lot of content that you would prefer not to see, and this content then manifests in the outputs. But the question is it worse than human scientists? Probably everybody would agree that people are biased as well. People are also inaccurate. People also hallucinate. People also confabulate. And sometimes these biases and inaccuracies also penetrate to scientific outputs. So yes, there is certainly the risk of bias and hallucination in the case of large language models, but this risk is also true for people. And sometimes these biases don't have easy solution. I was, of course, experimenting with the bias. Probably many people were experimenting. So in spring last year, I asked AI tool Midjourney, which was designed to draw images, to draw me a professor, doctor, and manager. And as you can see, I got only white males here. No women, no other races or ethnicities, only white male. In case of professor, mostly old white male. In autumn, I asked you to draw me a scientist, and here, luckily, one of the 4 suggestions is woman. So at least it is not so extremely biased. In case of a professor, we got even one non-human being, which is quite interesting. But as you can see, the white old males are still largely prevalent. This issue of bias towards white people and towards male people was something that the companies providing these tools have been repeatedly criticized. So they tried to introduce some artificial balance to this output. And bias is something that you can easily measure. Very transparent example is gender bias. Women are about half of the population. So when the output of the language models should reflect this this fact. And also the distribution of different races in the world is somehow quantifiable. So again, this can be reflected when producing output. But sometimes you may end up in a situation that is not really desirable. You may have heard about the like funny request, or maybe a funny response that someone asked the Gemini tool from Google to generate an image of a German soldier, and then he got this black soldier, woman soldier, and even Asian-looking German Nazi soldiers, which, yeah, it's a diversity, but certainly on wrong place. And in general, the question whether to artificially introduce the diversity is not really clear, because the world we are living in is biased. So the texts that the large language models were trained on are biased, but it reflects somehow the reality of our world. Of course, sometimes we are not happy with that reality and we would like to change it. But the question is whether the large language models is the place where we should change the reality, whether it should reflect our worlds, or it should introduce the diversity artificially to prevent harmful biases. And this is something where the answer is not really clear. Another question is responsibility. So we know that the outputs can include biased, inaccurate, or incorrect content. Neither the tool nor the provider takes the responsibility for the generated content. So it's always the human user that is responsible. And AI tool cannot be listed as author or co-author of a publication. This is something that probably everyone agrees, and it's one of the very few agreements that the scientific community has. But what is coming in future, and even in near future? What if an AI tool makes some new discovery? What if it discovers something new? Many people argue that it is something that the large language models are not capable of. They can just reproduce what was already there, but it's not entirely true. When Google DeepMind trained the AI tool to play the Go game, by training and by playing with itself, it managed to develop new strategy and then beat the professional players. And we can expect this in science in a near future. Already there is a tool provided by one AI company that can do all the steps in the scientific process automatically. So they can do a literature review, generate some ideas, check the novelty of that ideas, design experiment, set the hypothesis and design experiment to verify that hypothesis. And if it is something that is doable algorithmically, so it can write the scripts and execute that scripts, get the data, analyze the data, and based on the analysis, it can write a paper. It can also do the review on that paper and improve that paper based on the review. And after that, the paper is ready for submission to a conference or journal, and it has quite a good chance to be expected. So we can end up in situation where an AI tool will significantly contribute to some discovery, but it cannot accept responsibility, so it can't be an author. But there will be humans who would be happy to be mentioned as authors, but their intellectual input may not be high enough to qualify for authorship. So given current rules, we may end up in situation where there are no authors or nobody and nothing who fulfills our COPE criteria of authorship. Another dilemma or another issue is equity. Here is very much a positive side of the large language models. There was a research evaluating the barrier that non-native English speakers have in science, which is about 95% of the world population. But non-native English-speaking scientists, they spend about half more time reading papers, half more time writing papers. They have to more frequently ask someone to proofread their papers, and are more often rejected due to poor English writing. And there are more efforts they need to disseminate, and the consequence is that they may not attend conferences due to language barriers, so they lose opportunity to get new contacts and so on. So on an average PhD student need 19 extra working days per year to keep up with the native English-speaking counterparts, which is a lot of time. Not mentioning extra costs for proofreading, lost opportunities, and other issues like bureaucratic obstacles, visa applications, and so on. And this is certainly an area where large language models may help to uphold equity. They can help write papers, they can help with literature review, so it can lead to increased productivity of non-native English speakers. But there are two problems. First, again, not everyone benefits, not only scientists in less developed areas who can't afford using language models, they are quite cheap, but researchers in certain topics are disadvantaged. Those who are researching genocide or sexuality, these are the topics that are frequently blocked by the ethical filter of the AI-based applications. So ChatGPT or Google Gemini refuse to respond to some kind of questions, whether researchers in other areas don't have these problems. And there are negative effects of disclosed use of AI tools. There was a research on how much people trust AI-generated content, and it's not surprising that people don't really trust that content. The experiment was that people were getting the messages about the disadvantages of vaping, and when the source was not disclosed, so the recipients didn't know whether the message was written by AI or by human, they trusted both sources to the same extent, but perceived the AI-generated messages as more effective. When the source was disclosed, people trusted the AI-generated messages less. So the results showed kind of a bias against AI-generated messages, which is something that now disadvantages the non-native English-speaking scientists. So there is the dilemma here is first to use it or not to use it. For me as a non-native English speaker, if I use it, it increases my productivity. But if I then disclose it, which I should, it's a disadvantage because people will trust it less. And of course, there is a dilemma on how detailed the disclosure should be. And it seems that the more detailed disclosure we provide, the less it affects the trustworthiness of the product. If it is just a language polishing and not producing content as such, it does not affect the trustworthiness. We are getting to the applicability of the rules in general. If we
3 more minutes.
Yeah. Maybe I need to. Yeah. If we imagine clear rules for authorship and for acknowledgement, so then the declaration of the help of AI leads to disadvantage for researchers. Reviewers may be more suspicious. Papers may be more likely rejected. Grant applications are less successful, and so on. So those who lie, those who don't follow the rules are rewarded. In fact, there's nothing new in principle. And again, this is something that is substantiated by research that people sometimes people lie. There are many experiments how to measure to the extent to which people lie. One of them is that people roll the dice. They don't show the result. They just say the number and get appropriate amount of money. And then on the aggregate level, you can measure how much people lied. And there are other experiments. And there was a meta study that showed that the extent to which people lie largely depends on the experimental design. So in any experiment, you can design the conditions where everybody will lie, and you can also design the condition when nobody will lie. So this is very important lesson for the policymakers who should design the rules in a way that people are not incentivized to incentivize unethical behavior, which put together with the systemic weaknesses in science, like the quantitative criteria as a base for evaluation of scientific output, review process that is not sufficiently rewarded and depends on voluntary work, and the overall publication business where publishers make the profits basically from taxpayers' money. So it is in the interest of publisher, it is in the interest of an author to publish the paper, and in case of any doubts about integrity, not retracting the paper. So this is an incentive not to sufficiently address misconduct. So in combination with this, it is potentially very, very harmful. But again, this is nothing new. So to conclude the main messages of my talk, we can't stop using AI tools in science. The tools are simply here, and we have to learn how to live with that. Appealing to ethical values of individuals works, but only to a certain extent. Everybody has to feed their families. We have to earn some money. And if that money is based on the quantity of the output, then it's potentially risky. So the rules and the evaluation criteria should not incentivize unethical behavior. So in my view, the solutions should be changing the evaluation metrics for scientists, ensure the quality of peer review, and change the overall publication business model, which again, it's nothing new. So as I said at the beginning, the AI tools in general exacerbate existing threats, but there are no new threats in principle. Thank you.